Vice President of Engagement. Okay, we are recording, by the way. I'll just start over with my personal introduction. My name is Martin Key. I'm Director of AI Strategy for AMS and Professor of Digital Marketing, or actually Digital Strategy and Marketing for University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. Today, we are going to discuss how to integrate AI into marketing education. And I'm joined by Patricia Rossi, who's our Vice President for Engagement for AMS, and Amanda Yaman, Director for Online Seminars. And we've got a great speaker panel today. Our webinar will last 1 hour. Each speaker has around 10 minutes for their presentation, and then we will open it for question and answer. Please feel free to send us questions and comments through the chat. Or if you prefer, please raise your hand and we'll call on you after the speakers finish their presentation. As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, this event is being recorded and it will be available on the website and the YouTube channel. So, Dana, Maria, and John, thank you so much for being with us today. It is so great to have first movers in this space, especially with all of the questions that we have, not only around how this impacts higher education and learning, but really this is impacting society at a pretty deep level, and there's a lot of unknowns. So it's really great to have you all with us today. And with that, we can get started.
Great. Thank you, Martin. I'm John Hadjimarcou. I'm Professor of Marketing and Dean of the College of Business at the University of Texas at El Paso. It's great to be here. The last thing I want to claim is that I'm an expert in teaching and AI. I think we are all going through a process of learning, adapting, trying to figure out how to use AI in our classes. So having these conversations is very important. I can go on and discuss a couple of things, or if any of the other panelists want to jump in and start the process, either way is okay with me.
Sure, John, go ahead.
Okay, so let me share my screen. I hope you can see my slides now. So I wanted to discuss a couple of things today with you. One of those things has to do with creativity, and I think when you talk about marketing, creativity becomes a very important process. And also I wanted to discuss that coupled with the idea of setting limits and policies, something that Martin mentioned in his introduction. So here is a fact about AI. The average creativity has gone up dramatically. What we consider, or what we used to consider as, creativity in the past, I think has been elevated to a different level because now AI can generate multiple ideas in seconds, as opposed to us and our students struggling to come up with new ideas. As a teacher, the idea of creativity, and especially when I asked my students to be creative, has been one of my most dreaded experiences. Because I knew I would get a question back from the students, can you give us examples of creativity? And then they would put me on the spot to be much more creative than I thought I was. But AI has solved that issue, sorry. So it's very easy to provide examples by using AI to do that. We can generate hundreds of ideas in seconds, and we can modify those ideas to our context and our needs based on the prompts that we provide. Another thing that it does is the fact that students now can focus on the marketing of the ideas instead of the painful and a lot of times unsuccessful process of generating just one good idea. So we used to see students spending a lot of time trying to come up with one good idea and then very little time in executing that one idea that they had. That's not the case anymore. So what is the key to doing this in your classes? I think the key is to teach your students to use proper context, provide the best prompts to extract information, and then vetting those ideas. Some people might argue that, there is no critical thinking happening if we use AI to generate those ideas. But if you ask your students, for example, to just take the top 5 ideas and critically think through those, the pluses and minuses for each one, and then come up with the best one, I think we can actually aid critical thinking rather than impeding it. So the other thing I wanted to discuss with you, and I realize we only have about 10 minutes or so, had to do with the policies that we can put in our classes, or we should put in our classes when it comes to AI. I think this is one of the most difficult topics and subjects that we can talk about. Here are some realities. You cannot stop students from using AI in your classes. You can tell them don't use it, but they will use it. The other thing is that the detection tools that we have are not foolproof. So are you willing to take a chance to accuse a student falsely, even if that chance is about 1 or 2%? I think it's very important for us to consider the benefits and costs of using AI in our classes. What will the students get out of it? How are the students going to suffer because they are using it? Or what is the impact on learning that we are going to see because the students are using AI? Does AI diminish what we learn, or does it amplify our learning? I think it does the second one, but we are still trying to learn from it. AI, and this is a fact, AI can do all writing assignments better than most humans. This is a general statement. So how do we use that to help our students do a better job when it comes to their assignments? Will my students be at a disadvantage if they do not learn how to use AI? And that's a question that you need to answer. I think most students will be if they don't use it. So if you decide to allow your students to use AI, I think it's important to go through a process to develop some kind of a policy on its uses. And getting them involved in the process, I think it's very important. So one of the things that you can do is to appeal to their good nature by discussing issues like integrity, trust, respect, and accountability. So engage them in the process, talk about all of these issues. Avoid using the use of AI to create a sense of fear and intimidation. That's the last thing you want to create in your students, that AI is bad, don't use it, because we know they are already using it and they will be using it in their jobs. I think it's important to encourage your students to disclose fully how they use the AI and what they learned from it. Ultimately, students have different options when it comes to writing assignments and any other assignments. They can pay to get their assignments done, and we know that's already happening through paper mills and things like that. But, is that better than using AI to create their assignments or to write their assignments? And that's a question that you need to ask yourself. I'm sorry about that. This is the other thing I wanted to share with you. Some resources that are out there. I recently took a great workshop by the authors of this book. And I realized I really know very little about AI and teaching. And that was one of the realizations. So we are all learning about it now and how to use it. The other thing is there is so much we can do with AI related to teaching, whether it's tutoring, syllabus development, create exams, grading, generate examples, generate assignments, grade assignments, be critical about assignments. We can do all sorts of things, which I think it opens up, it elevates teaching to a different level. The problem that I'm having personally dealing with AI is keeping up with all of these new things that are coming up. So this is what I wanted to share with you for now, and I will be happy to have a conversation later on. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That was really great. And I just want to echo really quickly that probably what is most overwhelming is trying to keep up either with just the research, the changes, the dynamics in platforms, regulation issues. It's quite overwhelming.
I think I'm going next, Martin. So let me keep my screen. Okay. Can you see?
Yes.
Can you see that? Okay, perfect. Okay, I have you on about 3 different screens here. So, it jumped back. I don't have any notes on here, but okay. Now I'm not seeing what you're seeing, I don't think. Are you still seeing the screen that has ETSU on the first slide?
Yeah, we're seeing it right, Dana,
Okay,
so it's fine.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. We did trial this actually beforehand, but unfortunately, I guess it reverted back to the original. My name's Dana Harisson. I am the Department Chair of Management, Marketing, and Supply Chain here at East Tennessee State University. I also oversee our MBA programs and Associate Professor of Marketing. Thank you so much for having me here today. I think just to reiterate what Martin said, it's really challenging right now to stay abreast of everything that's coming out in terms of ideas surrounding how to use generative AI and also, how people are using it, but also how we're using it in the classroom, how we're learning with it. And so I found I was able to get a glimpse of Maria and John's presentation beforehand, and I found it interesting that I think all of us kind of went slightly different directions, which was really interesting because, everyone sort of introduced things that I was completely unaware of, even though I've sort of been reading a lot about this recently. So I know there are probably varying levels of expertise with AI, with people that are joining today on the call. Probably about 99% of my discussion will be surrounding specifically generative AI. So regardless of your expertise, though, hopefully this presentation will really equip you with a few ideas to help support the use of Gen AI in your classroom if needed. I know there's still some discussions around whether or not to include this at some universities, but I really think we've moved from those conflicting viewpoints about whether we should allow or outlaw ChatGPT in our classrooms to really how we integrate it to help students augment their work, not replace it, but augment it. There was an article actually published in December of 23 by Inside Higher Ed, and the title was Indecision About AI in Classes last week. But I think that's really kind of a representative of where we are now versus where we even were maybe October of last year, so not too long ago. How we provide students with what industry leaders are doing and what skills they're sharing that our students need to know about when upon graduation. So that's what I'll kind of talk about a little bit today. But one thing that I want to point out with the current slide that's up is the comment that we will not consider applicants in 2 to 3 years that don't know how to use AI to augment work. I find this pretty interesting. I sat beside someone at a recent conference. We have a Dean's Executive Council conference thing here, and I sat beside them at a lunch, and I heard from the Chief HR Officer. I heard from a CMO officer last fall, and we've heard from many other people as well. So they're not even going to consider our graduates in the next 2 to 3 years if they don't understand how to augment their work. And there are some other ones here. Hopefully you can have this PowerPoint when it's all over with, but there are some other things that you can go on and read about supporting it from the practice perspective. In terms of the benefits of general AI, there's a really great working research paper out there that I came across by Delacqua et al. 2023. It is authors from Harvard, MIT, University of Pennsylvania, and maybe some Boston Consulting Group, might be a collaboration with them. They conducted an experiment inside of a company with ChatGPT. One of the experiments was inside the capability of AI, and one was sort of outside of the capability. And in both tasks, users witnessed substantial performance, as you can see here, while the users of the tasks outside of the ChatGPT capability reported more incorrect results, relying too heavily on the tool with the analysis. They still actually reported higher recommendation quality than those that did not actually use the tool. So I thought that was kind of interesting. If you look at the bottom right of the quadrant here, reduced divergence. So this is one thing that I think we should probably keep in mind as we start maybe integrating this into the classroom. But when users over-rely on AI, the divergence of ideas drops by 40%. So kind of an interesting percentage there. And I thought it kind of, it's something that I want to carry into my classes and sort of instill in my students, is that, this isn't necessarily the best final approach when we're using things like this. It does need to be edited afterwards. Let me get the next slide. Nope. Okay. So in terms of some use cases, I've had some conversations with several companies that are using and encouraging the use of ChatGPT or Gen AI in many facets through the organization. And the idea is really to work smarter and augment what they're doing so they can improve overall productivity. Previously, on a previous slide, it mentioned that executives surveyed during a 23 Gartner AI webinar say that the marketing function is second only to IT in its adoption and intent really to adopt Gen AI solutions. So we're really seeing a lot of use cases coming out of marketing with generative AI. And some of these include what you see here on the screen. I've heard of advertising content creation, sales outcomes, product development, data analysis, understanding different customer touch points, performance feedback. Some are using it for customer segmentation, and then others really are using it for image creation. I've got an example of that here at the end of the PowerPoint, something that we did inside the College of Business and Technology that I thought was kind of interesting. But a lot of the image creation is, I think it's Stable Diffusion, Dolly, some of those are offering those capabilities. In terms of use cases for higher education, I kind of like to break it down like this. Really, this is kind of just how I think about it. It helps me decide what to integrate or how to integrate this into my classroom. But using ChatGPT can be thought of in several ways. So for example, it might be used by a faculty member to provide student support. We know that it would be really impossible for us to provide individual tutoring for 100 or more students each semester outside of the classroom where we are already lecturing. But Benjamin Bloom, quite a while ago, discovered that one-on-one tutoring results in performance improvement of 2 standard deviations, which could really mean an entire letter grade of improvement. And I think when we think about coming out of COVID and maybe some of the challenges that students are facing in various ways, this could be a potential impact in helping support those students and retaining them long-term and helping support them through graduation. So think about the value that you could provide your students by developing personalize a content tutor for your class. And I'll mention a little bit more of that later on, but another area we could use Gen AI is to improve our personal productivity. I actually just got out of we redeveloped our general education curriculum, and our department did not have any courses in that, but I thought I'm going to submit something this time and see if it will go through. And I submitted something and spoke to someone yesterday, and they said, we really liked how you had something outlined. I wish this was something that could be carried through into other proposals. And honestly, what I kind of did is, I mean, I developed the course objectives. I developed and then they had developed the overall objectives for that particular general education category. But I did stick it into Gen AI, ChatGPT, and I said, just dump these into the categories that they best fit. And so I did tweak a little bit after that. I had already developed the content, but I just said, throw these in there because I think I had 10 objectives or something. So I just said, throw these in. And so I did some tweaking, but that was something that I used it for that really increased my productivity. We can use it for things like research. I'll mention a couple of sites for that later, but developing lesson plans, I've heard of syllabus development. I think I heard maybe a provost mention, not here at ETSU, but a provost mentioned that they had used it for syllabus development, assignment ideas, PowerPoint outlines, curriculum development. And then another area that we can use it for is for obviously direct impact of our students in terms of learning and productivity in the class. So if you teach a marketing analytics course, this might be allowing students to use Gen AI to dive deeper into complex topics, or for using it such as coding for coding errors. We had an instance, so I teach marketing research and analytics here. And we had an instance where a student was struggling with downloading a library from Python. It's actually not an uncommon problem. And I said, I'm away from my computer. I was, I'm sorry, I can't help you right now. Can you just throw that into GPT to see what it produces? And they probably 5 minutes later, they did it and they said, oh, I got it to work. The library is downloaded, and then they were ready to go again on their assignment. So it's very helpful when you can't be right there immediately for your student questions in some of these instances. Maybe you teach a business communications course and you can help students with interview skills. They could maybe use the tool to develop potential questions based on certain job posts. Maybe you teach marketing strategy and you could integrate allowing students to use ChatGPT as sort of a way for them to critique themselves and develop sort of these personalized recommendations. And let's see the next slide. So these are some industry resources. That means some university resources that I found. There are 9 different universities listed here. If your university doesn't currently have much support surrounding the use of AI, or even if they do, there are so many resources available at other institutions as well. In fact, I really like exploring these because I can adopt ideas from a variety of places. And here are the 9 universities that I've sort of come across that provide some really great information. Iowa even has a page on AI assisted literature reviews. So I don't know if you know, but you can actually create a custom GPT. So if you're more familiar with ChatGPT, you probably are aware of this. If you're less familiar, obviously this might be something new. But this can be uploaded into your LMS system. So we currently have a faculty member doing this right now in our department with their syllabus. It's sort of a very introductory level, but this can be done with the course content that you develop as an instructor, and is especially good for complex topics. So you can take it to that next level after you use this for maybe a syllabus, for example. You can take it to maybe other course content that you develop to support what you're teaching in your class. Students can then interact with it and ask it questions. So on a basic level with the syllabus, it might be due dates or about assignment details. And then maybe a more complex level might be helping them to break down definitions or complex topics. So it's also another way for you to help them ask questions of something while you were sleeping overnight, because I know sometimes we don't have the same hours that our students have. So this is another example here. So the paid version of ChatGPT has many options. If you are unfamiliar with that, if you go in at the top left of your screen, you might see where it says Explore GPTs. You can click on that, and then you can go and search for many different topics, and it'll actually populate with tools that might be helpful for that particular topic. So, for example, we have faculty that use this for exploration with research, such as finding articles that weren't on the first couple of pages of Google Scholar, image development, and even more. I know our AMA student group actually uses this sometimes for image development. So I could also see maybe math support helpful for better understanding what might be taught in marketing research and analytics courses. this is, so where to really begin. If you're new to this, it is pretty overwhelming because it's honestly a little hard to know where to start first. So one place you might begin is through LinkedIn Learning or TED Talks. There are a couple of really good TED Talks. Even really talking with your peers inside and outside of the university to see what everyone is doing. Most of us probably have access to LinkedIn Learning through our universities. So I posted a few of the top ones here for my original search. You know, listen in your car when you're getting up in the morning or getting ready. This is something that you can do because it's not extremely interactive. So most things are not extremely hands-on and interactive. It's something you can listen in the background and get some really great ideas. I believe we're at the point now where we might all need an AI policy in our classrooms. So I know that John mentioned this and he had some really great ideas around this as well. This will help students understand when they need to work on their own and when they need to embrace using tools available to them. So a statement might consider circumstances around students can use tools, maybe how they might cite AI work, maybe understanding the tool might produce poor and accurate results. We call those hallucinations. And when they might be penalized for wrong answers. I think some trial and error is very helpful for students, but you know, on a final submission, they have to understand they're going to be penalized for those wrong answers. So they should understand the limits of the tools. There are also some considerations to teach students when using the tools. Consideration should be given to preserving critical thinking, balancing that integration of use of ChatGPT for classroom assignments. Students should understand how to use AI ethically. So, you know, not using it 100%. It would be helpful for students to learn how to interact with the tool using different prompts as well. So that can be a little challenging. I actually find that challenging for myself because I kind of ask it questions like I would a text or a Google Scholar or a Google search. And I find that I'm not very detailed. And so then I have to keep asking questions over and over until I kind of get what I want. So those are some things that they can be taught. They should understand that it does produce false information sometimes. And also we need to be aware as instructors that Turnitin can actually produce false positives as well. I had a good friend that said they threw some of their pre-ChatGPT articles into Turnitin to test out the capability to detect what it might return. And it actually said that it was maybe over 90% or something. And that was before ChatGPT even became something. So if we can provide these PowerPoint presentations, because I have some links in here, they're embedded in these, and you can see some of these statements from other institutions. And then if you're completely new to ChatGPT, I would suggest maybe starting small. Consider starting with adding an AI statement to your syllabus, and then maybe even creating the personalized GPT with your syllabus, or consider placing a statement in a quantitative assignment where students can use ChatGPT. So something very basic. Many of them have, many of you might have developed a marketing plan, so they could use the ChatGPT to analyze their final reports, have them decide where it suggests valid improvement, something like that. And it could be even where you posted an anonymously, somehow you removed all the identifying information from a prior submission, and they could maybe use that to make recommendations on something that already existed as well. So if you're not new to ChatGPT, or if you just want to spend all summer working on the tools available, I suggest maybe you go big, integrate it thoroughly into your classrooms. We don't want to lose, once again, that critical thinking component for students. So how we teach them to augment their work rather than completely rely on this tool. But if you do team projects, I've also seen where I think this was a Harvard example. They trialed out ChatGPT to create a team charter that outlines how they'll work together, maybe how they'll communicate, share responsibilities, and so forth. And they found that actually very helpful. So just a couple examples for each of these, maybe starting small versus going big. And then this was the example that I mentioned earlier. So this was something that was done using AI here inside the university. So if you notice, the first image on the bottom was actually the original image, and he went out there with jeans and a jacket one day, and then they put a suit on him. So they used AI to modify that image, and I know it's been used in a couple of other situations as well. But I thought that was actually a good example as to some of the things that can be done. And I know some of us do lean towards the creative side. So your students are going to have access to those tools that integrate AI, those image editing tools. So I don't mind answering questions later on, but I just wanted to throw my email address up here. So if you are interested in emailing me later, please feel free to do so, and I can share this information with you. So.
Thank you so much, Dana. That was pretty fantastic. And you're right. I love how your approach and the information that everyone is using is a little bit different. Maria, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, I'm gonna go ahead. Let me just share my screen. Please let me know if you can see it the right way. Yep, okay. So unlike my colleagues, I'm really not an expert, and I have more questions than answers with regards to this. People who know me know that I'm technology passionate, so this would be pretty much my initial reaction to any new technology. And then questions start coming. Just like my 11-year-old son is happy with technology, and he and his friends pretty much look just like that in that image when working on computers. When I see them, I start wondering whether am I always up to date as an instructor with regards to the new technologies? Am I going to be able to keep my students just as creative and excited about this technology as you see in this image? And then how am I going to be able, especially in the context of Chat, GPT, and Claude and all the generative AI models, how am I going to be able to maintain their level of creativity and critical thinking without them just copy pasting from all these models? And then another question comes from and related to what we're talking about today is, okay, how can I use generative AI to teach, and where do we draw the line, and what's the most effective way so that it doesn't make us completely useless in class? So these are the main issues that I reflected on while trying to integrate generative AI in my courses. How can I make my students think critically about its use and maintain their creativity, but also use it effectively? Because I saw on the job market, there are some jobs are already asking for prompt engineering skills. And then how can I integrate these technologies in teaching? And from this side, the problem was not as significant because we have at Embry-Riddle, we have a very good instructional design department. We have a dean for online education. So we have different AI-based tools that we can integrate in our courses. But for me, the question was, okay, but which of these tools are relevant to the industry, just as Dana presented, and which of them should I be including in class? And finally, the major issue that we could use to talk about for weeks is related to ethics, the bias and the accuracy and the reliability of the model, but also how can we prevent plagiarizing, students plagiarizing in classes or presenting copy-pasted information. So rather than providing you answers here, I'm just going to give you some examples of how I try to integrate AI tools, AI-based assignments, but also how I used AI to create and prepare our new social media marketing course, and a little bit in the marketing analytics course. So on the one side, I focused on content creation and ethical considerations. So there's no stopping students from using AI, and we shouldn't try to stop them. So I'm trying to encourage them to use AI in an effective, creative manner and think critically about what they are using. So here are some examples of how I started them in the social media marketing class by going over disinformation and misinformation and their ability to vet and to think critically about the information that is available there. I discussed with them resources about from different generative AI models, and also to extend what Dana was saying about creating your own GPT. We are also experimenting with our own GPT, social media muse, to create content based on instructions of not being biased and being polite and considering the target market. So based on our instructions. So that's an experiment with our students. Now, an important part in marketing and social media marketing is related to understanding your audience, including using AI-based tools for sentiment analysis, for example. So we are using AI tools in the social media marketing class for content generation in a cross-cultural context, or culturally bound context, where students need to reflect and critically think about the content they got and whether it is adapted to the market to which they are trying to communicate. Another way in which I use generative AI for our social media marketing class was in creating a scenario, a case study, scenario-based, to which in which students will make decisions and reflect on using generative AI and communicating with the market in an ethical way. Optimizing their campaigns, doing automation is also something very important for the industry, for practitioners. So we are practicing a little bit on this side with automating content creation, using bots in different assignments in the class, trying to understand their target market, but also reflecting on these different ways in which they could automate their content creation for the class. I also teach the marketing analytics class, a topic that I actually started learning at the AMS with Dana and in her training on analytics. So for the analytics class, because we had already integrated Python from Dr. Joe Hare's and Dana's textbook, I integrated and gave students resources about generative AI for code generation and code vetting, and I encouraged them to use different models to check and verify their code, but also to use different machine learning as well as generative AI tools for quantitative and qualitative analysis. So they also delve a little bit in generative AI in the marketing analytics class, but Dana is really an expert in this, so she could tell you more. Now, as John mentioned, creativity and critical thinking are important. To this, I also added the importance of collaboration and collaborative workflows, especially when we're talking about social media, advertising, content creation. So I also try to give students assignments in which they reflect, they do collaborative work on creating and analyzing social media content, and also vetting it and asking the opinion of generative AI for them to get additional ideas as an idea generation and for creative purposes. So here you can see a summary of using generative AI for different purposes in their social media classes. And I'm happy to share with you all these assignments after the presentation. And then, as Dana mentioned, ethics are important for all our courses. And here you can see an example of instructions that I give them in class in which I ask them to document their generative AI use as well as their prompts so that they can learn more and practice on prompt engineering. So these are some of the essential aspects that I wanted to talk about. I'm always available on LinkedIn or by email to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Maria. One quick, before we get too far into the Q&A, there was a really good question about just accessing these tools. And I think probably a lot of us, the most common one that we're using is OpenAI's product, ChatGPT. There's a free version which works on an older model that's a little clunkier compared to what you can subscribe and pay $20 a month to have access to. That allows you to create all the custom GPTs. But I do want to mention that if your university provides you with a Microsoft 365 access, like that's the tools that you use for Microsoft Outlook. If you go to Bing's Copilot and sign in with your university credentials, you're actually going to get access to what is ChatGPT 4 Turbo. So the actual Microsoft Bing Copilot that you probably have free access to through your university credentials is going to give you access to the fastest version of ChatGPT. I just wanted to say that real quick because I just learned that was available, and that's what I plan on giving my students access to as I require them to use generative AI for assignments. Does any of the panel want to expand on access to these tools? Dana, I did want to ask you real quick. Can you share a custom GPT with a student even if they don't have a paid subscription? Can they still use it?
Yes. Well, I know we're doing that I know one of our faculty members is doing it right now with their syllabus. So yes, I can go back and see if there's anything special that we've had to do with that, but yes, you can share that.
Great. That's really good to know. I've done a bunch of really wacky custom GPTs. I don't even know if I'd want to share them with students, but that is a great tool. John, Maria, did you have anything to add about access to these tools?
There are many, I wanted to mention something. There is an overwhelming amount of tools available out there. So it is overwhelming even to decide what to share with students. Even if students have just the basic, the old Claude model, the free Claude models, or the old ChatGPT, it's still enough for them to practice and to see how it works. I tried to give students information and insights about the main models out there, and to share some of the smaller tools coming from them. But there is always going to be something new coming up, as well as as long as they get the main idea on how to use and for what they could be used, they could then make their own decisions on what and how they could be using. And I wanted to add that for everybody who wants to learn more about these tools and about teaching marketing, I think the AMS conference is an amazing opportunity for debate and to learn about what's new. I just remember, for example, the special session on AI that we had last year that Dana coordinated with Dr. Farrell, and Martin was there as well. And the conference is a great learning opportunity, especially for new technology. That's where I started learning about marketing analytics with Dana, and about AI with you guys. So if you can attend that, that's something to do.
I'm so glad you plugged the AMS conference coming up, Maria. That was on my to-do list, and I would probably do it again. Real quick, someone asked about, is the paid version of ChatGPT 4 worth it? The difference is it's faster. It's an updated model. So ChatGPT 3.5, the free version, hasn't had access to the internet since 2021. ChatGPT 4 Turbo, the newest subscribed version, is going to have access. I think it was trained probably sometime last year on the internet. Plus, it can search online, so you can actually ask ChatGPT to do a search to inform your answer if you would like. So that would be one reason to pay, or to ask your university to pay for it. I think it's a really good. If you don't want to pay for it, department funds or someone at your university should pay for you to have it, just so you can become more familiar with it and have updated, faster version. Before we move on, John, did you want to add anything to accessing these tools?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I believe that you need to have the paid version to use the data analysis GPT that they have, that OpenAI has. So it has to be the paid version. The one other thing I wanted to add, I think it's the proliferation of custom GPTs that is going to create these, these new things that we are going to be able to use, and keeping up with all of those things that is going to make it very difficult for us. I don't know if you had a chance to hear or experience the Maisie tutoring tool that the University of Michigan developed. You can dump all of your course materials onto that tool, and then your students can go there and ask any questions, and it acts as their personal tutor, which I think is an amazing tool, something that we couldn't do last year. But things are changing dramatically.
Yeah, that's a great point. In fact, new models now can handle so much more information in terms of what you can upload and then ask it questions about.
Yeah.
There's been big changes in that. There is a question in the chat about the safety of your data. So if you upload something to a model, and how safe is that data set? I'll say what I know about it, and then the panel can chime in. If you sign into that Microsoft Bing Copilot with your university credentials, it's going to show a data protection icon. And of course, with paid subscriptions, these companies are offering data protection. What does that mean? Does that mean that they're not going to use it to train their model on, or that someone else can access to it? There might be some legitimate protection there. It also might come down to whether you trust the company or not. But I'll open it up to the panel if they have other thoughts on that.
I don't allow GPT. Well, okay, I'll give you two things. So I don't allow in my general, so I have the paid version. I don't allow it to hold my data. What happens when I upload it? I mean, admittedly, haven't read all the fine print there. I'm assuming they probably use it, and then I don't know what happens. But in terms of the enterprise version, that would be where I think you're safe. So if that's what your university subscribes to, I think you're safe there. I will say I don't upload anything that has a name or a university name, nothing like that. So nothing identifiable. I don't upload anything like that. I remove all of that if I'm going to upload and just kind of brainstorm with it a little bit. So that is something that I do. In terms of your data set, I mean, you can, for student purposes, if you create data sets or something that's different, if you're going to upload your data set, I mean, I personally wouldn't rely on it 100% to provide you with accurate responses, because I know that it provides varying accuracy depending upon the size of your data set. So it might do better with maybe smaller data sets versus larger data sets. So also something to consider and double check. So I wouldn't consider it 100% truth if you're going to play around with it in terms of data analysis. It'd be good to throw in there and get some ideas, and then maybe also obviously double check yourself as well. But it can produce like hypotheses and things like that. So if you're going to upload a data set and tell it maybe independent variables and dependent variables, I almost showed that actually in this presentation, played with it a little bit, but it can produce hypotheses for you. So good tool for maybe students too, right? When they're learning to ask questions about a data set, might be a good use for something like that. But I don't give my students anything, I mean, that is something that we have to be worried about in terms of compromising any information from a company. If I did, I probably would steer them away from using this, at least in the interim, or unless we used it in enterprise editions.
Just a short mention regarding the data privacy. I participated in the fall in our entrepreneurship week at an event where we had an intellectual property and patent lawyer talking about the use of generative AI. And he mentioned that even if you put, for example, information, proprietary information in a chat GPT prompt, if it's related to your patent or intellectual property, it can legally be considered as public disclosure. And then that could prevent you from getting a patent for that content and for that technology. So there are still very unclear things regarding the privacy and ownership of the data we include there.
That's not unlike you know, some issues a long time ago. I stopped using Google Drive to store any of my personal research because they made a change to terms and conditions one time that made it seem really ambiguous who really owned my data on a Google Drive. So I stopped doing that. And it seems like maybe there's a similar issue with OpenAI. Now there are open source versions like Llama that you can download. They don't, you know, these enterprise level generative AI tools are not all equal, but the ones that you can download and run on your own device is going to have a lot more protection. And then if you air gap that device, meaning that if it's not connected to the internet, then you do have some security there. We actually had this is an interesting question from Bella about using generative AI for qualitative data analysis. Now, I will say, as before I let everybody jump in, the way we don't, one of my recurring issues with this technology is we don't have adequate categories of how to think about this technology. Like, it is not, the analogies that we use for existing digital technology, it's not adequate. Probably the best way to think about generative AI is more like a person, and I don't want to anthropomorphize it too much, but the way that it works, the language nature of it is so powerful that you can almost get it to, we don't even know everything that we can get it to do through various types of prompting. And it's not like software, where software is like, software will do this one tool and it'll do it reliably. Generative AI does many different things at many different levels. We're not even sure why it does that. So I don't know if anyone has used it for qualitative data analysis, but I bet you could convince it to do some interesting, maybe theme identification or nodes, if you know, and things like that. It wouldn't surprise me if you could actually get it to identify themes. Does anyone have experience with that?
I did see it used actually recently in a research project. And they had downloaded text reviews. So it involved reviews, a company's reviews. So I did see it used there, Martin. And similar to what you said, it was more of a sort of a categorizing. It was a little bit, maybe a little bit of a sentiment analysis, but more categorizing, I believe, than anything else. So.
I think the biggest challenge in that case would be describing how the categorization or developing themes was done. So if you're, planning to publish something out of it, I don't know how you can explain the outcomes of that. The other thing, I believe it's best to be used for exploratory kinds of things, and then use the other tools like in Vivo or something like that to do the qualitative analysis.
John, that's a really good point. The more you play around with these, with generative AI, it cannot, two things that we recurring themes. It doesn't know what truth is. It doesn't know what's true. It doesn't know what isn't true. The second thing is that it cannot explain to you why it produced a certain answer or outcome.
Right.
It will just make something up, and it will change every time you get it to try to explain. So in terms of this methodological approach of substantiating categorizations, codes, themes, whatever, you are really going to have to do the legwork on that, because if you ask it why it came up with certain categories and codes, it cannot reliably explain that or explain its answers. And that's for anything, not just qualitative research. It cannot explain why it came up with any type of answer reliably. It'll keep changing.
I do.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry, Martin. I was just gonna say, I don't know if it exists, but that might be a really interesting research paper to do, maybe four different versions, and trial that out. And like John said, use it as sort of a starting point, and then follow up and do, the traditional approach to whatever you were going to be working on. But that actually might be something that would be very interesting, I think, for research articles. So.
I completely agree. And there's so much room here, like for everyone that's thinking about this for research. I mean, we don't know how, in a marketing context, we have no idea how generative AI is going to affect, customer behavior that have long-term access to generative AI. We don't understand how it's going to impact our existing marketing theories and approaches to strategy development, content development, anything of the sort. We don't know how this is going to impact crisis management for marketers. And I'm sure you all heard about the story of the Canadian airline that allowed a generative AI powered customer bot to promise a certain bereavement refund to a customer. And the airline tried to deny it because it was under certain circumstances the airline didn't provide. But a Canadian court said, no, your chatbot promised it to the customer. You have to pay that bereavement fare for the airline. So that was really interesting. Well, I see that we've reached time. This is such a great discussion, and the panel, thank you so much, Dana, Maria, John, for your time, for your expertise, for leading this discussion. It's been really, really great. I do want to plug our AMS in Coral Gables in May. So coming up really, really quickly, I know that there's a lot of generative AI focused sessions and panels that are going to be in that conference. So please come out and join us. And thank you so much, Patty and Amanda, for all the behind the scenes stuff today. Really appreciate that. And this has been a great discussion, and it's wonderful to just share something that's so interesting with great minds such as all of you that have attended today. So thank you so much, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I have a quick question. Martin, how do we access the recording?
That'll be shared on the AMS website and YouTube channel, and you will probably get an email notification that it's available, I would imagine.
Like in the next week or so? Because I missed the front end of this, the whole front end. Okay, I'll look for it. Thank you.
Great. You're very welcome.
It should be available within the next week.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
At the AMS platform.
Okay, under webinars, I'm assuming.
Exactly.
Perfect. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank
Same
you.
to
You
you.
too.
Thank you very much.